Okay, guys, so we are going to graph our quadratics in factored form today. And in order to do that, we are going to use our calculators yet again. So the first things first, we're going to use this equation for y, and we're going to type that into y equals, so the stat plot button. And we are going to rock and roll from there. So we're going to go y equals. In order to get the fraction, you must hit the green alpha key, and then you'll hit y equals, and you are going to hit enter. There we go. So we get 1/2. And then you can type in the rest of your function here. And when you hit graph, we end up with this happy facing parabola. All right, so now we're going to make our list of ordered pairs. And to do that, on your calculator, you must hit the blue second button. And you're going to go to graph or table. And now we're going to choose values that we can actually see on our graph. So we can go up if we'd like. Now notice our output of 10 is too high. So we're going to probably have to use -4 at 9.5. Now, if you're not too sure on that one, we can actually go out and do 9 divided by 2, which is 4.5. So that we could do. And we'll go back to the table here. So at -4, we're going to start listing our points and rock it out. Once you list your point, let's actually plot it. So to the left, -4, and we're going to go up 4.5, so not quite at 5. All right, and then we're going to list the remaining inputs and outputs here. So -3, 0, we'll do -2, -7.5, and so on and so forth. So let's plot -3, 0. So over to the left, -3, up nothing. Then we're going to go to -2 and -7.5. So if you're scared about that, exit out and do 7 divided by 2, which ends up giving you 3.5. Okay, so now we'll go back to our table and list it. So -2, -3.5 would be over left -2 and down 3.5, -1 and then down 6. And then we have this weird guy of 15 divided by 2. So come back out. Oops. And I need to do 15 divided by 2, which is 7.5. And so now let's go back to the table there. So that's -7.5. So at 0, we're down -7.5. And now, guys, we can go ahead and find our other pieces. So +1 goes to -8 and list out the remaining points. And hopefully you notice that we're starting to come back up again. So after 1 and -8, so over to the right one, down 8, we end up coming back to 2, -7.5, then 3, -6. So now we're starting to get that symmetry where we're going to mimic how far over and how far down we are as we're moving. And so at 4, we should be at -3.5. At 5, we should be on the x-axis. And over at 6, we should be up at 4.5 again. So we end up making that symmetry. All right, now let's make the U, and then we can identify its key features. So your vertex is literally in the middle of your U. So the middle point of your U lays right here. So our vertex is over 1 and down 8. Now the question is since this is the lowest point on my graph, is that my max or my min? Well, if it's the lowest point on my graph, this is what we call a minimum. And don't forget about your roots or your zeros. They mean the same thing. So roots, zeros, and x-intercepts, they all are saying the same thing. So where do I cross or touch my x-axis line? So we're going to make a note of that right here, and we're going to identify. So in between -2 and -4, my one root is -3. And then our second root is over here between 4 and 6, which means that it should be at 5. All right, that's all we wanted to identify. Now, notice that your roots actually come from what's inside the parentheses or your factors. But notice that the 5 is the opposite sign, and the 3 is also the opposite sign from the parentheses. So something you may make a note of is take the opposite sign from inside the parenthesis. So take the opposite sign from inside the parenthesis. It would make it a lot easier for you. And that works with roots or our x-intercepts or our zeros. All right, so let's try another one. And let's try another one. And it looks a little bit like this. So notice that your -5 became a +5 on the graph. It's the opposite sign from the parenthesis. Inside this parenthesis, we have a +3. And when we graph it, it becomes the opposite, so -3. Okay, so let's try example number 2. So this is a negative sign, so make sure you use the negative button under the 3 and type in the rest of your function. And this time we have a sad facing parabola. Sad face. All right, and with that sad face parabola, we are going to use our table. So second graph. And now let's list our points. You'll plot your points that you came up with in your table, at least the ones we can plot. And now we're going to talk about the vertex. So according to this graph, it looks to be that this is the highest point on our graph. So if it is the highest point, this is a maximum. And this vertex is located over to the right 3 and up and down nothing. Or you could find it right here in your table. Okay, now let's talk the roots. And the root comes from the x-intercept. And so my only point that touches my x-axis is over here at 3. So the same value as my vertex, right there in the middle. Now notice up here inside the parenthesis, this guy was a -3 inside the parenthesis. So the x -3, and to actually identify it, we do the opposite sign. So instead of being a -3 from the inside of the parenthesis, it becomes a positive when it's on the graph itself. So that's pretty important stuff there, guys, and we're a sad parabola. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice doing what we call factored form. And factored form is written as y equals little a, which tells me if I face up or down. Inside the parenthesis, you have x minus a number or plus a number. And your second parenthesis is also x minus a number, whether it be positive or negative. Time to practice.